Eirik is literally one of the best salesmen I've ever known. This guy can literally, I think he can sell anything. Really, really impressive. He also had a really, really fast start to his professional career. He sold his first business straight out of undergrad. He's done a lot of really awesome stuff. So that's why I wanted to have him on the show. Eirik actually was introduced to me by my then client. I met this guy Glenn at a conference, and I met Eirik through Glenn. He had this company that he started, and so you went to Babson, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was PyroShield while I was at Babson. I actually had to delay my last course, so I technically graduated in 2017 because the company started picking up, and then I was like, okay, one history class is just going to be asked to, postpone it for a little bit of time. Yeah.
How long did it take you to finish that history class?
Okay, so we started in February of 2016. Well, it's officially, we incorporated in June, but our first sale was in March. We made a sales page, and then we cold messaged a bunch of people saying, let's remove your piracy for $500 a month. And then someone bought, and then we figured out what we just sold after we sold it.
That's the Bill Gates model, right? So
Yeah.
you didn't even have the product, but you sold it before you even had a working version of it. And then you had to figure out what it was that you sold.
Exactly. And it's funny because there was a lot of overlap between what you were doing. I think we met that summer. You came to Boston, and there was a lot of overlap with PyroShield because we were enforcing copyrights, and I had no idea what.
Do you know why I was in Boston? And you know what happened when I was in Boston?
What?
Donald Trump got elected, which is super crazy. So I'll never forget that trip that night. And I think I met you either the day before or the day after.
Yeah.
I was there for the Inbound conference.
Yeah, that's right.
And you were sick. So you were 6 months out of taking leave from Babson?
Yeah, so I loaded up on classes that spring, so I finished in May, and that's when Olsey, the guy who was running the tech, Olsey and Peter did the front end, Olsey did the back end. Olsey was there with me as well. It was me, Olsey, Glenn, and we just kind of figured it out what we were doing as we went along, because that was really early stage. I met Glenn at a startup pitch competition at Northeastern, and we were just talking about what we were doing. That's how that got started. So in 14 days of releasing the sales page, we had our first client for $500 a month. And yeah. Then we scaled. We applied to Mass Challenge. We got.
Wait, I gotta ask you. How did you know to even do that? Where'd you get the balls to sell something someone didn't have yet? Like, how did you learn that in Babson? Where'd that come from?
Yeah. So the thing that we did, it was me and Kanad at the time, and we wrote down 10 ideas to earn money because I was going to graduate. I applied to some sales jobs because I was like, okay.
Was that a mentor told you? Where'd you get the idea to write 10 things down?
You know what the craziest thing is? Throughout the whole experience of PyroShield, I really didn't have a single person that I got advice from. It was kind of a figure it out as you go along type thing. So, by the time we got through Mass Challenge, 100 days in, we had the largest YouTube channel in the world that was working with us, and we were in Mass Challenge. And the biggest problem that I had was the actual focus on the product and being able to now narrow down what the positioning was and the core buying persona for the product. We did sort of well by focusing on these high ticket course creators, high ticket meaning they sell courses for $500 plus. So it's like a very, specific piece of knowledge on marketing, sales, could be law, could be some form of education for IT or medicine.
And the basic rationale, you just focus the energy on the client that brings you in the most revenue?
Yeah, so here, I'm going to show you, this is actually going to be relevant to anyone who's running a business that hasn't hit, $1 to $3 million revenue. This is an article that I wrote. It's based off of the rule of 5 ones framework. This would be really relevant to you, Amir. The reason I was asking about the platforms that you were on is because there's probably one platform that's outperforming the others. For any company, the biggest problem that I find is that they don't know the 3 basic things. What are they selling? Who are they selling to? And why are people going to buy it? And so This is Clay Collins, former CEO of Lead Pages. He went on to do a few other things, but he has a really great model to reduce the complexity of sales for any company. And it's the rule of 5 ones. And how it works is that you want one target persona, one product solution, one traffic source, and one conversion method. And the fifth one is 1 year. And the reason why this is powerful is because
You wrote
if
this
you think
article, right?
about what?
Eric, you wrote this, right?
Yeah, I wrote this and I made this diagram in Sketch. So it's all of us. So the key here is that if you think about a sales funnel from this perspective, when you actually think about what most startups are going to do, or what beginning companies do, is that they do multiple products and multiple personas and multiple traffic sources. And the problem with that is, even if you're the best growth marketing expert or product strategist, you have no idea where you're making money and how much you're going to be making and what the conversion rates on these things are. Because just imagine having 3 target personas and 5 traffic sources for those personas, and you're selling 2 or 3 different things, right? Like it's a multivariate problem that even the best growth marketers would have a hard time and a challenge understanding. So Clay Collins is like, look, if you're not at $1 million a year in revenue, you should be playing the game of the 5 ones, which is specifically focusing on one persona, one solution, one traffic source, and one conversion method. And the 1 year is the idea that, look, it shouldn't take you more than 1 year running this model to get to $1 million a year. And it's totally fine switching out the persona. Maybe you pivot your product solution as well, and you find that there's a better traffic source after testing some messaging. The idea is that this is a forcing function for accountability to keep yourself on track, and focusing your limited resources on high impact activities instead of spreading yourself too thin. So if you look at the live streams, like you're testing out some traffic sources, and say, you can say, okay, what is the highest converting, highest engaging traffic source that we're getting? And then you say, okay, how do I go all out on that traffic source? That would be the focus. And so you probably have some data at this point, and you're really killing it because you've done a daily episode, which is the hardest part. And so now it's just a matter of looking at your funnel and saying, okay, how effective is my efforts put in this activity to generate revenue? I was just talking to another product strategy agency earlier this morning for an AI product that we're working on. And we were talking about how it's really hard to understand that cost of customer acquisition. And it's a vital metric because
they call it business school. They call it CAC.
Yeah, CAC. And so it's really hard to understand it, because if you look at a funnel that's got that multivariate problem, well, you're going to have a really hard time reducing what your CAC is. And you need to know that number too, especially in the professional services. It's like
CAC and LTV. That's all I think about. How much, what's the value of this one customer, and what did it cost for me to bring them in?
Exactly. And it's so fundamental too. But when you go to like let's transition this back to the story of PyroShield. I was doing most of the outreach, and it was cold messaging. And I would say that the cost of acquisition here was it was massive, because I was doing a bunch of research on these clients and so forth. But the lifetime value was with $500 a month. That's $6,000.
Yeah.
LTV. Average client
zero overhead, right? I mean,
yeah. And that's not even, that doesn't even factor in the overhead. And so, I understand that at the beginning stages, you're working out your positioning, you're going to probably invest more in the client than you may return to actually see what the product solution does and work on the product and so forth. But the central thesis here is that if you simplify your sales funnel so that you actually understand the metrics, it will make it easier to grow, rather than trying this game of, well, I can't do that because I don't know what works and I need to try everything. And it's like that model doesn't really, it's not as helpful, because it's harder to pull insights out of that. If we look at the PyroShield days, I don't know, am I allowed to talk about the patent? We'll just say we had a patent, right? And so forth. And it was just like, that wasn't core technology. We even built it outside of PyroShield. It's like, oh yeah, it could be a product someday. And we had watermarking thing, and we had the search engine piracy scanning, and then we had the direct to pirate site solution, and there was no Like if you look at it, we had 4 or 5 solutions, 3 or 4 target personas. It was not going to work. And so that's when I said, okay, the only way to get myself out of this problem is sell it as a valuable asset of here's my book of business. And so we had 3 buyers lined up, and that was through a couple cold emails, 2 people. And then we sold the company to
You only sent 3 emails?
I think it was, 2 of our competitors, and then 1 private investor, and then 1 person that I knew in the watermarking space.
So you were formally trained in business. And so one thing I'm curious about is, what were some of the pain points that you didn't realize were going to be pain points until you were actually in it?
The biggest pain point is it's something that you can only get with experience. And so it's a more psychological thing of like, okay, there's literally nothing that is certain. So how do you deal with absolute uncertainty? And especially in an early stage product where you really don't know. And so if you look at it, like what I did was incredibly stupid, which is like, I'm going to earn a lot of money by starting a company with no experience and no knowledge of this market and no knowledge or connection to the
That
client.
sounds brilliant, not stupid.
Well, so it was from like a risk standpoint and a financial return standpoint, it wasn't the best, but the knowledge that you got, because it's your feet are to the fire. So it's like a great way to put yourself in the pressure cooker and say, you're going to either learn or die. And that's what the process was. We had a seed round laid pretty, like the groundwork for a seed round in 2018. It was ready. And we had one of our clients say that they'd be willing to invest. And then a couple really high level execs from some big companies. But I couldn't take the money because I knew that I didn't have the core skill set. I eventually found out that this was product management, which is what I was missing. And that's what I went to study at the acquirer and work with their team, integrating the 2 solutions together and really get the core fundamental knowledge of product management, which is, I mean, the rule of 5 ones is it's a good synthesis of the broad scope of a company for the sales funnel. But when you look at the product solution, that's where you would focus on your product strategy. It's the solution and persona fit. And so, yeah, I taught myself typing.
What do you wish they would have taught you at Babson, if anything? Or is
Yeah,
this something
so
you had to do?
you know, the saddest part about Babson is that if you look at,
We don't have to talk about your particular alma mater.
well, so the business school, it's like it's so far removed from what the actual experience of, you know, working with clients is like, or starting an entity, managing legal,
right?
and it just, I mean, you know, Babson's it's supposed to be a good school for that, but like, you're not even taught how to open up an LLC. Like you have to use Google for that, or open up a C Corp. And what are the different, you're taught like some of the fundamental differences, but nothing will compare to going actually through the experience of setting up that entity and closing it down. Like that was another thing. Like, you know, you sell a company or the company goes under. It's like, that's a whole mess in itself that no one talks about. Like, what are you supposed to do here? How do you like wrap and wind up this company after you sell it and so forth? Like I still had bills from PyroShield up until 3 months ago. That it was done, but that was a 24-month process. So that's for sales, and the funnel and the experience that I got out of that was really how important some of the groundwork foundational knowledge is in product and in your ability to efficiently build and scale a business. Because if you know the fundamentals of product, I would recommend anyone go look at talks by Tom Chi. His Mind the Product 2018 talk is fantastic. Pay attention to the conclusion on what his concept is called the magic moment. And then there's Indy Young, she's a user researcher, and she has a fantastic understanding of how do you look at the problem space? Because a lot of people, they have issues with the focus, and your tech isn't the focus. Your focus is the problem that you're going to solve for the end user.
So talk about product development. So you said that was like the one key thing you were missing?
Yeah, product development.
And that's what's kind of led you to Boulder Road, right?
Yeah. So working with the acquirer, managing their product team, working with the CEO taught me a lot. It gave me the downtime to kind of study these principles from like the VC world, whether it's the Y Combinator school or underscore VCs content. You know, you have a lot of really great content from Brad Feld. And so I just intently focused on that because I knew I was missing that. I could have taken the money at PowerShield and like hoped that I learned it, but I thought the chances of that were pretty low because you're running a business, and then how much time do you actually have to learn stuff when you have all these stakeholders pulling you in different directions and you don't know things. So the level of uncertainty that I had at that moment and the amount of things that I needed to accomplish, it just didn't it didn't add up. The risk was too high. So that's what led me to make the decision that I did. And so now what the biggest realization that I had was, okay, I can play the same character that I did at PowerShield, the entrepreneur, but now I have the skill sets to actually execute on something very properly. We're doing it really well. Like a client that I have is practiceinterviews.com, technically like the program manager there. And I mean, it's going really well, like 40,000 monthly viewers and 100 to 110 inbound bookings a month, up from a lot less back in December. This is through COVID. We're growing 20% month over month using the rule of 5 1s and good product strategy. And so what it's proving to me is like, okay, well, these tools and frameworks work. And now it's like, okay, can you apply it to a problem that's big enough that's worth solving? You know, we're working with Glenn on the camera problem and so forth. And that is an interesting problem where you have, you know, people who do traffic studies or need to monitor traffic, or law enforcement that's looking to monitor traffic. They have no good solutions for it. And it's a pain in the butt to use these speed radar things, the trailers that you see out there now. And you can develop a solution using a camera that costs the same. And the problem for just police stations is worth $10 million in hardware and $1 million a year in recurring monthly subscriptions. That's in the US. In Massachusetts, it's a tenth of that. But again, this market segmentation product strategy is fundamental to understanding. And
so this retooling helped you be able to actually bring to life ideas. So that's what you mean by execution, right?
Yeah.
So you weren't relying as much on others. So you could actually, if you had an idea, you could cook something up, show something to somebody.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So like, let's make it relatable. Like if you're working with an intern, right, for let's say any person who has an intern on their team, the problem of working with hiring someone or working with someone is, what is the level of ambiguity they can deal with and the proficiency of their output at that level of ambiguity. And so if you told an intern, look, I want you to push this patent through and take care of all the client work, the level of ambiguity there, it's like extreme. And they're going to get crushed by it. Like it's an ambiguity crush. And so that's what the problem was when I was running PowerShield. It was just being crushed by ambiguity and not understanding. I could have met the problem, but I felt that the probability of meeting that ambiguity, especially after raising a round of financing, would have been too high, meaning me not understanding how to do it properly. So that's why I took a step back and did this product strategy research. And over the last 24 months, studying rapid prototyping with Tom Chi at his course and just reading anything and everything that I can. And now it's like, okay, with that groundwork, you can then approach the problem of how to build a product better. It's the same as like what you're doing.
So if I had an idea, you'd be able to rapidly prototype it in what, a day, 2 days, a week? It depends on complexity.
That's the thesis of Boulder Road. And Marty Kagan, who runs Silicon Valley Product Group, has a really good thesis on this. And that's like, if you are sitting with an idea for more than 7 days, it's too old. And so the other harsh truth is that even if you build your idea the way you think it is, it's probably going to take between 5 to 7 iterations before it even creates any value. So that's the crux of it. So
that's like a pivot, right?
So Tom Chi has a really good framework for it. It's called an actual. So when you need to replicate your product experience as closely as to how your user would do it for as cheap as possible. And what you do is like, okay, you can use no-code tools and rebuild the product.
And that's sort of what you're saying, is that a lot of this is about usability and about having a product that people will actually want to use. Because for me, like the way I see it is you can invest tons of money, tens of thousands on just getting to a prototype, and then you put it out there and nobody wants to use it, and you don't quite know why, but it's just the reality. And then you lost all this money on something that is never going to be used. Whereas wouldn't it have been better if you had just a mock-up that, okay, maybe it doesn't actually perform any function, but at least you get a real sense of how usable it is and how people interact with it and whether or not people are actually ever going to want to use it.
100%. And that was I mean, when we were working with Glenn on the camera system, that's what we did. We didn't have any tech, and we put together the basic camera front end with ProtoPie, and it was clickable and everything. It felt real. And you got the actuals. You were like, okay, the way that it's put together, no one understands how the alerts work. Okay, so got to change it. And the whole point there is that you're getting actual feedback that from the experience at which the user would actually use the product. This is the biggest misconception in IoT, by the way, is the fact that most hardware engineers are going to focus so religiously on the hardware that they forget the interface that you interact with the hardware is the app. And it's like, I have a client and they're a lighting integrator, and they see this, like all of the lighting controls, HVAC controls for buildings they're just the software you use is horrible, and they don't care. Like the manufacturers don't care. It's big business type stuff, but it's the same thing. And you prototype that.
So what they figured out is what Nest was about.
Yeah, that's what Nest was about. It was simplifying the experience of adjusting temperature and so forth. And it ultimately came down to the fact that they realized, look, that interface that you're using, whether it's the app or something like that, is the most important part. And then you do have hardware. You want it to be good enough to solve the hardware challenges that you're going to come across, but don't underestimate the user experience part. And you can test IoT because of that. You can test IoT without having any hardware, by building the software that you would use to show the hardware IoT data. And so that's what we were doing with the camera solution, right? And so we were able to understand what this market wanted with zero investment in hardware and very little time in the actual.
That's so huge, because it's not some hypothetical. It's not like, oh, yeah, I think this will be received by the market in this fashion. It's like, no, this is hard data.
Yeah. It's people, and the best is you have something. The Mass DOT thought it was a real product, right? That it looks real, and you can go to my site BolderRoad.io this Sunday, so that'd be September 1st, and you'll be able to see prototypes of what it looks like. But these tools, right? Like you want to replicate the experience the user is going to have if it were real now. Use fake data to do that. And these prototypes, they shouldn't take you more than 5 to 10 days to build, like your actual product experience. And guess what? It's going to cost a fraction of the cost of going to a developer, because like you get the prototype in 5 to 10 days, you can test and adjust it. There's no code involved. And then you see what your product is actually going to perform like. If someone's willing to demo or buy it on the spot after you show them the demo, you know you've nailed what Tom Chi is calling the value creating moment or magic moment. And so
what's the tool right now that everyone what are the cool tools to use that people use?
Yeah. So good ones to use, like it took, if you have 2 weekends, you could pick up ProtoPie and Framer. The ProtoPie is like $15 a month, $20 a month. So Figma is about $15 a month. So it's not bad at all. And you can buy UI kits too, where people have already made a dashboard for a cryptocurrency trading exchange or some video editing tool, and you can buy the kit and then just make it clickable.
So literally in a weekend you could have a working prototype.
I built WhatsApp in a day. Right? What you're going to be capable of with this no code, the movement is called no code, where if you think about
it's actually even going to probably give you a functioning prototype.
So the front end tool that I'm using, ProtoPie, to build it, there's no database layer, so you can't store data and so forth, and the values won't change It's just going to be the same every time you click it. There are apps like Bubble that will actually allow you to build the database layer and the pseudo logic that manipulates the data and stores values, so you can have a functional product at the end of this. There's Framer, which is like Protopie, but the positioning is a bit different. They said, hey, look, let's make it so when you build the prototype, you can export the React JavaScript code for the front end. And then you just give it to a backend dev who can put it together. And so when you look at this, what's going to happen with no code is, most of the basic front end jobs for coding are going to go away or be automated by these tools. Webflow is a good example of that happening to front end website design. Wix just came out with their solution. You're always going to need back end devs, but simple apps like support ticketing systems for internal company usage or forms and stuff like that, that's going to be automated. Like it's just a visual editor for creating a database, and then you have the front end with another visual editing tool. This no code movement is picking up speed, and it's going to be more and more prevalent. I mean, I'm kind of like in the just researching all these tools, so I don't know what is new and what is actually out there, because I'm so just in depth with what are all these cool things you can do with AI, deep tech, and all these other things. It just seems normal. So I don't know how prevalent the no code movement is when it comes like to regular folk who's just like working, going to an office and they're doing their job. I don't know how well known it is. So
how much of an equalizer this is going to be, because now all these developers that had the coding skill that you didn't have are going to be competing directly with you. I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
You're going to be so dangerous.
I mean, the BolderRoad's site, like, I don't know how to code sites, but I used Webflow, and it's like, okay, it's mobile responsive and everything, and it looks cool.
You don't have to hire anybody. Is that right? You did it yourself?
Yeah, I did it, and here I can show.
That's so awesome.
I think I can show it. It's completely responsive and everything. So, yeah, it's basically, this is it. And it's like, yeah, I have to replace the pictures with actual clients, but it's completely responsive and everything. So, you build this with no code. I have no coding experience. It renders to mobile. It can make things clickable and not clickable. And it's the same with these apps too. If I go here, this is the AI product, Descript. I trained the AI model to speak like me. And so this blue text, you can edit audio like a text document, write new words, and then it will actually read it as if it were me. So if I play this, you can hear it. I saw that you were assistant at Google. That was the AI voice when it went over the blue. So it's like hyper realistic. This is the building app thing. So this is the prototype. You log in, you can see your building facilities and so forth, and this is all no code or whatever. And so
that's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah. And
you built all that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward. This is a prototype. It's going to change a lot based on what they built and the feedback. And the thing is, like, those prototypes speak much louder than a pitch deck or anything like that. And the fact that
pitch deck, I feel like the days are going to be over, the pitch deck days.
Yeah, well, I was talking to several other product people, and what I'm really curious about is the effect that no code is going to have on investments. So if you look at it, the bar to actually being a quote unquote good company is going to be raised so high right now with these no code tools, because there should be no excuse why you're not at like
yeah, exactly.
$1,000 a month.
You don't have a developer? Why do you need a developer?
Yeah. So what are your costs?
Yeah. And $15 a month for Protopie?
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. And then there's also a statement to be made about like the market intelligence that you can have. Like, it amazes me at how much data you can have access to with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, right? Like, everyone on LinkedIn, I can do aggregations of tell me how many financial services senior partners are there in Massachusetts. Oh, wait, there's 431. Okay, how many of those were active in the last 30 days? 210. And so that's just mind-boggling to me. Growth hack for anyone here, go get Phantom Buster, and you can automate all your LinkedIn messages and scrape search results on LinkedIn to get leads quickly. That's a fun little tool. So like for you you could automate the messaging of LinkedIn people with certain criteria and send them custom messages with Phantom Buster. The limit is based on the bot detection on LinkedIn. So it's 150 messages a day. If you have premium, it's 80 if you don't. But these growth hacking tools, it's going to be, this decade is going to be, not to overuse this word, but unprecedented in terms of the amount of automation that's going to happen and intelligence that's going to go behind the automation, right? Before the show started, we were talking about like the voice replication. One of the products that I'm working on is taking Descript and allowing you to replicate, you know how an email campaign works where it's like, hi, first name, I saw you were working at company. We want to do that with video so that you can mass send personalized video with the audio merged. So it's your voice saying, hi, Steven, I saw you were working as a senior partner at New York Life Insurance, just like you saw here. And the ability to get that personalized touch is insane. There's one company called Spirable. They do this for consumer-based advertising. So they will look at where you're located, the weather, what your interests are, and so forth. And they can auto-generate a Facebook ad that says, hey, I know it's raining right now. Would you like to order a Domino's pizza while you're sitting at home? It's all automated. And so these automation tools they're coming, and it's just a matter of,
it sounds like some of them at least.
Yeah, it's a matter of when. And the scarier part is like, what is, if we come back to like, how does this relate to IP law? It's like, I think this was before we were on the show too, like, how do you copyright your voice? Because if you go on YouTube like we are now, right, like you have enough audio data out there where I can copy your voice and then use a company like Respeecher and then say, I'll call your, I'll use Spokio or people.com, and I'll get your family's voice contact, and then I'm going to call them using a Respeecher type program, voice synthesis program, and say you're locked up in a cell in Ohio and you need to send me $10,000. I mean, the nasty parts of the tech are insane, but it's a normal distribution. So you have to say, okay, well, normally distributing the benefit, what is the benefit going to be? Well, now you could probably auto-generate these types of live videos with text. You could pay a VA $10 an hour to generate your podcast episodes from text, and then it will sound like you speaking. And so the benefit is the time savings there, making one-on-one personalized videos. Instead of doing one at a time, you make one and then send it to everyone. So
we've been doing it for platforms. So we've been trying to make more platform specific content for Facebook, for TikTok, for LinkedIn. But you're saying this is a whole new level, or this is like personalized for that particular individual. That's insane.
Yeah. So I want you to imagine, I have no idea why Netflix, I mean, I should look more into this, but why Netflix is not looking at personalized content like this, bringing movies outside of the platform into your inbox. Like, for example, if you pause a video with Leonardo DiCaprio, why aren't you getting a personalized video using video synthesis and synthetic media, where Leonardo DiCaprio screams at you and says, why the F aren't you watching this video? I want you to put everything down and go back and play the video. And you could get that in a personalized video sent to you.
This could be a $1 billion episode, Eirik, right here. This piece of content right here. Literally, man.
This is, well, it's true. It's like, there's so much. This is, okay, so it always comes down to like personal psychology too. So you have to be open enough to being able to see these opportunities. And this is the balance that I deal with all the time as a business owner. And I'm sure you do as well, right? Like when things don't go too well, then you're in a kind of scarcity based mindset. But what's amazing is
that's called survival, right?
Yeah. Basically. Yeah. You're like, okay, how am I going to get the next client and so forth? You're in that scarcity based mindset where your cash flow is kind of in the dumps or not in a good place, or you just had some unexpected expenses come up. And so when you look at this, like the funny thing, and this is one mindset that I go to a lot, is like, okay, you're looking at the same information set that Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Elon Musk have access to. Yes, they have some smart people.
Saying.
What? Yeah.
Not
So,
seeing what
so
they're
they
saying.
have some really smart people that can aggregate the data in ways that you may not be able to, but you still have access to the same basic information through the internet and so forth. And when I think about that, it's like, well, they're seeing relatively the same picture that I am. Why am I not coming to the table with ideas on the same level they are? And that's a mindset, like an abundant based mindset is like you always have access to that opportunity. It's just, you have to be at that level of psychology that can render those types of ideas,
You have to
right?
be in
Like,
the mindset to see it, right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
and that comes with it actually will come down to that uncertainty versus competence thing. If you think about it, like the level of uncertainty that you need to be able to deal with if you're running a publicly traded company is absolutely absurd. How you can't manage 5,000 people, 50,000 people, 100,000 people. Like, it's just not possible. You have to entrust that people underneath you are going to do it. And so Ray Dalio on a podcast with Lex Friedman was talking about this. So what he talks about is, if you think about your business and the people who operate in it, you want to think of your time leverage when working and hiring other people. So for every hour I put in this person, how much time are they willing and able and capable of taking that hour and then operating on their own?
But you have to have the infrastructure.
Averages, let's call it 1 hour to 40. And this is something that I didn't get right at PireShield. It's like I should have inspected the leverage time and so forth. And it actually was me coming from a more scarcity based mindset, which is like, look, if I hire someone that's better than me, then I'm not useful. That's not how it works. It's like you produce value and iron sharpens iron in that regard. And so if you're a business owner, you really want to think about this time leverage philosophy and say, are you hiring for the right competencies and skills when working on that? And working with people on your team. It's like a first principles approach to what is a business and then what is a good mindset, right? And so that's something like, I'm up to like an hour to 2 hours of meditation a day. And it's particularly just,
That's insane.
yeah, it's sitting on that thought. And I also run the weird experiment of recording every minute of my day in a digital report to see what that's like. And what it does is like those two activities like teach you how to objectively look at yourself, and you're like, wow, there's a ton of, there's two modes of thought to the same picture. Either it's, I'm a really poorly focused person that is worthless, or wow, there is so much opportunity here for my ability to improve focus and so forth. And depending on how you wake up in the morning, it will flip coins. And it's the same with your business too. Just knowing for sanity's purpose that you can always revert to an abundance-based mindset at any time is actually quite a fascinating
Choice.
thought.
That's your point. Choice.
It's a choice, 100%.
Right.
And if you look at emotions too, and this kind of went to the psychology of business, but it's like it's the core principle of being an innovator is managing your own psychology.
I think this is where winners lie. Like this is like what makes a difference, I think.
100%. And there's a gentleman, Andrew Huberman. He studies two things, stress and sleep, because if you can solve those two, you're probably 80% better as a person, and optimizing those two. And what he found is like, if you look at an emotion, how can anger stay with you is an interesting question. Or how can an emotion stay with you? And it only can stay with you if you feed it and you perpetuate thought that's caused it, right? The initial burst of that emotion, you're not able to control that because that's more of a reactive primal thing. But the perpetuation of an emotion is something that you do have control over to a good degree. And it comes down to your psychology and your ability to manage that. It's a fundamental part of, like, if you want to be innovative, well, you're going to have to manage your time and give yourself the opportunity to be open to new ideas and actually be in that mindset. If you are someone who likes prototyping and needs a prototype done, check me out at BolderRoad.io. It's BOLDER road.io, one word. And then, absolute pleasure jumping on this.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eirik. Thanks for being our first guest. Thanks, guys.